Hi everyone, welcome to this Transformation Tribe talk. I'm delighted to be joined today by Marc Cox, who is a friend, a colleague, a collaborator, and we've known each other for about 16 years. I think we just worked that out.
Yes, I know. I was having a little think about this, and so we connected. Actually, we didn't. We connected with. I connected over LinkedIn with Andrew Harrison.
Yeah.
When he was up at Manchester Airport, and I remember. I was only about 6 months into the company Spirit, and anyway, it's one of those things where I said, this is what I do, and she said, it sounds quite interesting. So we arranged a time to come up, and that coincided with snow from hell.
Yeah.
Manchester Airport shut, and I think all you guys were sent out to go with shovels to clear the runways. So anyway, the meeting got put back into another day, and here we are. So I must have said something that made you interested.
Yeah, and so it's worth saying you are the founder of a brand called The Company Spirit.
Yeah.
You've also written a book called The Business Case for Love.
Yeah.
And when we first met back then at Manchester Airport, I was embarking on my first big sort of leadership role, which was really centered around the customer experience and the consumer experience at the airport. So for me, it was perfect timing because I learned so much from the business case for love and the importance of having the head and the heart of the business aligned to the customer experience, but the colleague experience as well. And it really, really stuck with me. So it would be great to hear about the ethos of the business case for love and sort of what compelled you to write that book.
Yeah, I think it's. I think what was interesting was when I started off the company Spirit, I was trying to work out how would I be different, and so I tried to learn the lessons I was applying to other companies, and I'd worked out that actually what I wanted to focus on was company culture, and I did start to make the explicit link between the employee experience and the customer experience. So if you want a brilliant customer experience or a memorable customer experience, you need to start with a memorable employee experience. What I started to use though was the word love.
Yeah.
And believe you me, that got me into some deep water, deep hot water, because people saw it as some people saw it as quite soft and fluffy. And what's it to do with business?
Yeah.
And ultimately over the subsequent years, I started to try and make what I call the business case for love, to actually show that actually if you behave in the right way, then ultimately the business is more sustainable, and it gets bragged about and is commercially successful. So hence I put the business case around the word love. But even to this day, it's still quite a divisive word.
But what always sticks in my mind with it, and I've remembered it from our first session together, is the love grid, which is in your book. And that is such a powerful but compelling model that you created. And I've used that time and time again to engage people and engage skeptics when I'm trying to set the why we should do this change, why this is important, why we should invest. So do you want to just explain why it's important to move up that love grid and what's included in it?
I think this is my, I don't know whether it's elevator pitch. I don't know whether that's the right phrase, because it's a bit of an Americanism that, but it's one thing I developed to try and explain the link between internal company values and the external customer experience and the customer relationship and the choices business make. And it's interesting you refer to the love grid, because I remember back at me doing this on the flip chart, and there were 3 people in the room, and plus me, and I was going through the love grid, and I could see you got it.
Yes.
And I think that's really what I find quite interesting, is that some people understand it, but don't necessarily really understand its power. Whereas for you, you absolutely got it. And therefore, if you think of noughts and crosses, a little noughts and crosses matrix, basically my view was there are three types of businesses. At the bottom is what I call dealer behavior, which is where the businesses effectively only ever focus on product and price, and that's their mindset. You know, what's our product and how much are we selling it for? And that, in my mind, leads to a customer relationship which is no more than transactional. I buy, I may return, because the customer experience is no more than okay. And now, and you can have a very successful business in that.
Of course.
The trouble is, you've got no equity in the company or the brand, and therefore, the moment somebody comes along with a better product or a cheaper price, typically a customer will vote with their feet.
Yeah.
And sadly, in my and I do say sadly because particularly in the UK, so many retailers have ended up in this dealer behavior where it's all about product and price, and ultimately they pay the price. And ironically, given the fact that I used it as an example all those years ago, W.H. Smith is the perfect example.
Yeah.
Look what's happened. No investment in the stores, no love for the employees, no love for the customers. It was all about product and price.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they've been sold off, and the brand will disappear from the high street.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame. And then as you move up the love grid, you've kind of got your middle layer, which is more service orientated.
Yeah, I think interestingly, because I describe that as retailer, but it's not about shops. It's more about the fact that the businesses in the middle, that they have what I call quite a head way of thinking. So they'll want some sort of service proposition to go with the product and price, but the way they do it tends to be quite cold.
Yeah.
Now, if they do it well, the relationship can move up, and therefore from a customer experience point of view, the relationship moves from transactional to enjoyable, and the relationship can move from okay to respect.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, and a lot of, but that's safe. I've been, over the last couple of years, I've been not effectively commuting to Munich, and so I would use Lufthansa a lot. Now I decided to use Lufthansa rather than British Airways because my mind was, I'm going to go to Germany, I'm going to work with a German company, I get on at Heathrow, and I want to be in a German environment. Now, Lufthansa is the perfect example of something that sits in the middle. Actually, things did go wrong because there was a few strikes that happened whilst I was traveling, but it works.
Yes.
But there's not a lot of love.
No.
And you'd hardly leave thinking I've had a memorable time. But it gets you from London to Munich in an okay way. But at the top of the love grid is and it's funny enough, it's the only time I really talk about the word brand, because it's actually partly because the word brand is so confused and still confused into what people think is branding, i.e. the logo or the communication. To me, the brand is the values of the company,
yes,
what it stands for, what its purpose is, and what are its beliefs. So, to behave at the top, you need, in my mind, to have what I call the heart and the head working together. So the head bit is product price and the service proposition. The heart bit is what I call the company spirit. Who are you? What you stand for? What are your beliefs? What's your sense of purpose? And if they work in conjunction all of the time, then what tends to happen, and this is the first step on the journey, is if the company works hard in that way, then actually most employees actually will start to love what they do and love the company they work for. And if they get that right, then customers tend to fall in love with that company because they see how much the employees believe and are passionate about it. And on the other side, the actual experience it is memorable.
Yes.
And when it becomes memorable, that's when people talk about it and start to say other things.
And I talk in the Transformation Tribe about people-powered transformation, because if I'm implementing new IT systems, new operating models, new ways of working, you can have the best tech, you can have the best processes, but unless your people actually go with you, buy into it, are passionate about the change that they're part of, it never works. So, and that's something I absolutely take from that love grid, and sort of even now it's etched in my brain, and I'm constantly sort of checking back to it and thinking about it. And it is that balance between the head and the heart. I think it's so powerful, and it works because you can measure it. And I've measured it in many organizations. When your colleague engagement goes up and people are actively engaged and involved in change, you see your customer experience scores, however you measure it, also rise, and people say more good things about you, and it helps your brand value, if you like, and your brand positioning, which you can also measure now. So it works. This stuff really works. So what's changed then? What have you seen change? Because loads is happening now. I've been working with a client recently on their leadership development, and we're talking about this VUCA world. So the volatility, the ambiguity, the uncertainty, you know, all the things that are happening globally now are changing how people work. And I add an extra element to that, which is transparency, which Sarah Barry, a colleague of mine, and I talk about a lot. Everybody's got to be super transparent now, because there's no hiding place for bad behaviours or being unethical. What have you seen in the line of work that you do change over the past sort of 10 years?
The demand for change is coming from the employees upwards. And I think that you just touched upon something I think is very strong, is that, I mean, the much maligned millennials and to a large degree the Gen Z, who are also quite often maligned for who they are and what they do, most of the time wrongly, in my opinion. What is really important to them is that they call out stuff.
Yeah.
And they're not prepared, as you've just said, actually to work for a company where the environment or the culture is not great. And I think this is a real issue for leadership, because, you know, creating an environment which people love, it isn't easy.
You've mentioned book 2 is coming.
Yeah, eventually.
So what it sounds fascinating from what you've just described. I'm looking forward to it being released. What else does it cover? What, you know, talked about scandal.
I think it's trying to make sense of the world we live in now. So I think one set of pressures are, you know, good and bad business. There's another set of pressures which is, you know, how institutions behave, and how that can affect people's view of work. And then obviously probably the biggest thing that is yet to be fully resolved or understood is the whole working from home, working from the office bit, and what makes sense for people. Because, you know, obviously I'm of an age where you didn't work from home. You know, if you were working from home, you were seen as skiving, effectively.
Yeah.
And I think I think nobody quite knows, because obviously it being such a relatively recent phenomenon, of the effect, good or bad, that it's having on people. But, you know, you mentioned the corridor conversations, and I think what I see, which is the sort of common practice, is there seems to be a Tuesday to Thursday view of going to work, and Monday and Friday becomes the effectively extended weekend. I mean, I think there are two big thoughts for me. One is, if you are only ever working from home, how do you develop your own identity?
Yeah.
You know, outside of the home.
Yeah.
You know, how do you grow?
Yeah.
You know, what are the experiences you're gaining in order to make yourself better and more interesting? And I mean, work is a long time. Most people work a long time, and, you know, I think one of the saddest things I see is that, you know, people can often hit their early 40s and you know, run out of road.
Yeah.
Because they've stopped being curious. They've stopped looking for new things. They've stopped taking on board new ideas. And part of that is, if you're stuck at home, frankly, and your daily commute is to the chair with your Zoom calls and your Teams calls, I think you're missing out on so much. Now, the counter argument, obviously, is for a lot of people, particularly those with young kids, it makes it so much easier because we can manage the childcare and everything else. So I don't think there's a solution, other than I think what it is also doing is making employees think, okay, what is it we need to offer in the office, or offices feels like an old word now,
or
in the workplace,
yes,
that actually make people want to go to work.
Absolutely. And this
or want to go to the place.
Yeah, and it's so current for me, because two things, when you talk about emotional intelligence, which is highly important in effective leaders, and we all know that is how you read other people's body language, how you perceive how people are behaving in person. That's a really difficult thing to do over a video call. And it's really easy if somebody can mask a trait, or they can put on an act that is difficult to understand, good or bad, over a video call. And that in-person relationships is so important. And I was at an event yesterday with Amy Davis, who is also on a Transformation Tribe talk, and we are working on a project together which is about building online community. But we absolutely recognise that it has to be online community that works well, but you've got to have those in-person events and connections to strengthen that community, to build trust, to grow those relationships, so that the online effectiveness can be really amplified and work. But you can't do that without those I genuinely believe you can't do that without the human interaction, those human connections. To me, it takes us back to caveman and woman days. We need other people around us. We all have a role in society.
I suppose, interestingly, then that sort of leads on to artificial intelligence. And I had we went to this party on Saturday evening. I think party would be in inverted commas. Firstly, because the first thing that strikes me is how old everybody looks.
Never too old to party.
And yet, actually, what was interesting though was the daughter of the mum that my wife knows, which is the kind of connection in. She's a copywriter in advertising, and that was obviously my first career. And I'd read in the FT recently how the CEO of WPP, one of the major holding companies in advertising, had effectively, well, not been fired, but was going because he hadn't embraced quickly enough AI, because also of the effect it was having on, or the way it was changing two key departments, the creative department and the media department. And talking to Amy, another Amy, about her role as a creative person, actually I found quite reassuring, because she was saying, I've learned to use AI, but it doesn't replace yet original content. It doesn't replace the kind of core thought that you need to have when you're taking a brief and you're trying to create an ad that will actually change people's views. Worryingly, she said, what is happening is clients think of this as marvelous, and actually, we can just input everything into a little machine and out comes the answer.
Goes back to your love grid.
Well, I think
it does go back to the love grid.
It does, and I think this is, and again, Amy's view was, going back to the human side, is that at the end of the day, content is key. And whether it's content in terms of a presentation, or whether it's content in terms of a way you talk to somebody at work, or whether it's content in terms of an ad, and you've got to be able to do that in a way that resonates.
Very well said.
And you've got to be able to do that in a way that connects with people. And that's where I think, so again, another aspect of how work is changing is it's like, this is all being done on an iPhone. Now, there are some people out there who never who look at these funny little things with a dial and a phone that used to pick up to your ear and think, well, what the hell was that? So we, by definition, embrace change.
Of course.
But it's how you use it rather than how you are defined by it.
Yeah, no, well said. So The book is going to be called,
Well,
or is
it
called.
is.
It is called.
No, it's not called yet because I still haven't got a publisher for this one. But I mean, the working thought is what people really, really, really want from work.
Great.
And I think that's where I hope to, in a way, the same way it structures the business case for love, which is you're building a case as to why love is important within business in book one. I think in book two, this is why actually understanding what people really want from work is important today, because frankly, the more people feel good about what they're doing, this is the business case again, the more productive people are.
Absolutely.
And the more productive people are, they tend to care more.
Of course. I
think that's I don't know, there is still, I feel quite angry about sometimes because there is still an attitude thing going on. It's not just in the UK, but it often feels in the UK where people, they just walk through life, and they don't take the opportunities that are given to them, and they just think they're owed a living, and they're not.
Yeah. So, good thoughts. Like and subscribe to the channel. Marc's link to his biog and his first book, The Business Case for Love, will be in there. And watch the space and follow Marc on LinkedIn because you'll be the first to hear them when his second book is released. So what comes after that then? What's on the horizon? What's next for you? Obviously, the book's a big part of it.
I think what's next for me is I continue to I suppose share the philosophy.
Yes.
And I think what I find both reassuring and encouraging is in anything you have to keep yourself fresh. And I think the freshness comes from actually doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
In wanting to embrace new experiences in order to understand the changing world. And try and then make sense of it from a perspective of somebody who's got a few years experience of what it really means both for employees and ultimately their customers.
Yeah.
So I think I think what I feel good about is that whilst I wouldn't say everybody gets the business case for love, it has shifted.
Yes.
And people do get ultimately the link between the heart and the head.
Yeah,
and that actually, if you're going back to the love grid, if you do want to get your employees to love what they do and your customers to therefore love the company, you have to work hard at overall what is the sense of purpose, what is the company spirit, what makes us different, and be proud of it.
Yeah, and it's so current. So I would urge anybody, if you haven't yet read The Business Case for Love, it is so current now in the working climate. Are you still running your taster events?
Yeah. I mean, it was. In fact, I did one. Well, it wasn't. It was a paid for rather than a free one. But I did one last month, which was ironically is quite interesting because it wasn't advertising agencies in my day, which was obviously tend to be consumer advertising, but it was specialists in medical activities, and there was a holding company that had bought 5 different agencies, and the interesting thing was it was an old client of mine, which is all of my business comes from repeat business, and what I was being asked to do was just help them think differently and give them a framework about how they think about themselves going forward. One last comment on that, if I may, because that particular client I first met. I met him before lockdown, and then I did my one and only online event during lockdown.
Okay.
And I have to say, it was really difficult.
Yeah.
Because you're there facing a screen, and every so often people would press the wrong button and a face would appear. And obviously, my you know, if you like, the day job for me is facilitation.
Yes,
you know,
in person.
in person. And of course, you have no idea about what people are thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas actually, going back to this same, you know, event last month, you know, you've got 30 people in the room. You've got some people from America, you've got some people from other parts of the world, largely from the UK. But you can read the room.
Yeah.
You know, and they can look at me. Yeah. So it's a two-way thing.
No, I'm the same. I do stuff online, but my preference is always in person. I think
it's just hard.
Yeah, yeah. No,
it's
so much better. Well, that's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. Let's do a cheers, Marc.
Cheers.
Look forward to reading the book.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. Thank you.